Why is it that so often, in the silence of our thoughts, we find questions that shake the very core of who we are? What if everything you've ever seen, touched, or believed could be a dream, an illusion, or even a deception? Could you still be certain of anything? René Descartes, one of the most influential minds in history, wrestled with these questions centuries ago. His conclusion gave birth to a radical idea, one that continues to shape modern philosophy, science, and even psychology today. Descartes lived in a time of immense upheaval. The old medieval worldview was crumbling, shaken by discoveries in astronomy, physics, and exploration. The Earth was no longer the unquestioned center of the universe. Faith in tradition was colliding with the rise of reason and skepticism. In this intellectual storm, Descartes set out to find something firm, something indestructible, a foundation on which all knowledge could rest. He wanted certainty in an uncertain world. And so, he began a method of radical doubt. He decided to question everything he thought he knew. What if his senses deceived him? After all, haven't you had a dream so vivid that it felt real until the moment you woke up? If dreams can trick us, how do we know waking life isn't another layer of illusion? And what if there was an all-powerful deceiver, a malicious being capable of planting false beliefs in our minds? Descartes pushed doubt as far as it could go. He stripped away assumptions, discarded appearances, and tested every belief against the possibility of error. And yet, in the middle of this ocean of doubt, he found one truth he could not erase, that in doubting, he was thinking, and in thinking, he was existing. Cogito, ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. This statement was not just a clever phrase. It was the cornerstone of modern philosophy. No matter how much he doubted, no matter how deceived he could be, the very act of thought itself proved existence. You cannot think without being. This insight shifted the center of philosophy from the external world to the inner world of the mind. Instead of grounding truth in tradition, authority, or even the senses, Descartes grounded it in consciousness itself. The mind became the foundation, the one place where certainty could be found. This was revolutionary. It suggested that human reason, not external dogma, was the true path to knowledge. It placed the individual thinker at the center of the philosophical universe. But with this insight came a host of new challenges. If the mind is separate from the body, as Descartes believed, how do the two interact? How can something immaterial, like thought, influence something material, like flesh and bone? This puzzle, the infamous mind-body problem, is still debated today. Neuroscientists, psychologists, and philosophers are all wrestling with variations of the same question: how does consciousness relate to the brain, and how does thought translate into action? For Descartes, the mind was not just another part of the body. It was the essence of who we are, distinct from the physical machine of flesh. While the body could be doubted, because sensations might be illusions, the mind could not. The body might weaken, break, or fade, but the mind had the power to think, to question, to reason. That power, he believed, was the very core of our humanity. Think about it for a moment. Strip away your possessions, your status, even the certainty of the world around you. What remains? Your awareness, your ability to reflect, to wonder, to choose. This is what Descartes was pointing to. He was telling us that no matter how unstable the world becomes, we always have an anchor in our own consciousness. And that anchor is unshakable. Imagine the courage this perspective gives. In a world filled with uncertainty, Descartes hands us a tool of radical stability, the mind itself. Even when life feels like a dream slipping between your fingers, even when doubt clouds your vision, your ability to think is undeniable proof of your existence. In this way, Descartes gave every human being the power to stand firm, to trust the capacity of reason, and to search for truth within. Yet this radical shift also isolated us. By drawing such a sharp line between the mind and the body, Descartes created a tension that still lingers today. Are we simply rational beings inhabiting fragile shells, or is there a deeper unity between thought and matter? His dualism, as it came to be called, sparked centuries of debate. Some embraced it, arguing that the mind was proof of an immortal soul. Others rejected it, seeing it as a dangerous split that ignored the complexity of human life. What's undeniable, however, is that Descartes changed the way we understand ourselves. He redefined certainty. He placed the individual thinker at the center of reality. And in doing so, he gave us a framework for exploring not just what the world is, but who we are in relation to it. But here's where the story becomes even more fascinating. If the mind is so central, if it holds the power to establish truth, then what does this say about our choices? About our freedom? About the paths we take in life? Descartes didn't only ask, what can we know? He forced us to ask, what does knowing mean for how we live? And that's where his philosophy begins to intertwine with questions we still wrestle with today: free will, responsibility, and the search for meaning. If Descartes grounded certainty in thought itself, the next question becomes, what does this mean for the choices we make? Because if the mind is the one indestructible anchor of reality, then it cannot be a passive observer. It must be active. It must have the power to direct, to will, to shape. For Descartes, reason was not only the foundation of knowledge but also the source of freedom. He believed that human beings are distinguished from animals not merely by intelligence but by the faculty of free will. Unlike instincts, unlike conditioned responses, the human mind can reflect and choose. In his meditations, he argued that this capacity for free choice is a mark of our divine likeness, a reflection of God's infinite freedom, condensed into finite human form. While our knowledge may be limited, he wrote, our will is without limits. We can affirm or deny, pursue or resist, believe or reject. And in this lies both our dignity and our danger. Because with infinite freedom of will comes the possibility of error. Descartes knew this well. Why do we make mistakes? Why do we fall into falsehood? Not because our minds are incapable of truth, but because our will often runs ahead of our understanding. We want to decide before we fully know. We jump to conclusions, we accept appearances, we cling to comfort rather than patiently search for certainty. For Descartes, sin was not ignorance alone, but the misuse of freedom. The error was not in the mind's capacity but in the imbalance between reason and will. Think of the last time you made a decision too quickly. Maybe you trusted someone who wasn't trustworthy. Maybe you leapt into an opportunity without weighing the risks. Maybe you reacted in anger before thinking it through. In each case, the will surged forward while understanding lagged behind. Descartes saw this as the human condition. Our greatest gift is also our greatest flaw. But here's the hopeful part, he didn't see this as a cause for despair. Instead, he argued that we can discipline our freedom by training the mind. Just as a sword must be sharpened before battle, the will must be aligned with reason before action. For him, philosophy was not a passive game of ideas but a practical exercise in aligning thought with choice. By questioning, doubting, and clarifying, we prepare our freedom for truth. This view opens a profound reflection. Our freedom is not measured by how much we can do, but by how well we can choose. A person who follows every impulse is not free but enslaved to desire. A person who disciplines the will, who learns to act in harmony with reason, becomes truly free. In Descartes' eyes, freedom is the ability to act in accordance with truth, not merely to follow whim. This is why his philosophy resonates so deeply even today. We live in a world of endless options, constant distractions, infinite possibilities. But more choices do not always mean more freedom. If anything, they often paralyze us or lead us astray. Descartes reminds us that real freedom begins not in the external abundance of paths but in the internal discipline of the mind. To think clearly, to will wisely, to align action with reason, this is the essence of freedom. And this brings us to an important connection. If the mind is the anchor of certainty, and freedom is its highest power, then the question of free will becomes unavoidable. Do we truly choose, or are we simply responding to forces we don't understand? Descartes believed in the dignity of choice, but the debate has continued for centuries, and it is one of the deepest questions we still wrestle with today. If you want to explore how this connects to our freedom of choice, watch my video on free will, where I dive deep into everything that has to do with our mind and the choices we make. And to see how other philosophers challenge Descartes, check out Nietzsche's take on the meaning of life. I'll leave the links in the description. I highly recommend you watch those videos, of course, after watching this one. Notice how naturally this flows. Descartes gives us the framework, the mind as the source of certainty, the will as the source of freedom. And yet, he also leaves us with a puzzle. If the will is unlimited, and knowledge is limited, how do we avoid error? His answer was rigorous discipline, a method of thinking that could guide the will toward truth instead of falsehood. This was the birth of his famous method, the step-by-step way of breaking problems down into parts, examining each carefully, and building knowledge from clear and distinct ideas upward. It wasn't just a tool for philosophy, it was a blueprint for life. The method teaches us patience. It teaches us that clarity comes from focus, not haste. And above all, it teaches us that freedom without discipline collapses into chaos. Imagine applying this today. Before making a big life decision, choosing a career, committing to a relationship, pursuing a dream, what if you paused, doubted rash impulses, and patiently examined each step? What if you let reason illuminate the path before allowing your will to act? Descartes would say this is how we safeguard both truth and freedom. And in a way, he is right. The more we align thought with action, the more powerful and intentional our lives become. The chaos of chance gives way to the clarity of choice. The confusion of appearances dissolves into the strength of reason. And in that harmony between mind and will, we begin to glimpse what true freedom really means. If the will is infinite and reason is limited, Descartes had to confront another puzzle: how does the mind connect to the body? After all, we are not just thinking beings floating in abstraction. We eat, walk, suffer, rejoice. We are tied to flesh, bound to sensation, driven by hunger and passion. How, then, can a pure, immaterial mind interact with a physical body? This question became one of the most influential problems in all of philosophy, the mind-body problem. Descartes argued that the mind and body are two distinct substances. The body is extended matter, governed by mechanical laws. It occupies space, has weight, can be measured. The mind, however, is unextended thought, pure consciousness, indivisible, immaterial. You can divide a body into parts, but you cannot divide thought in the same way. Try cutting an idea in half, it cannot be done. For Descartes, this meant that the mind is fundamentally different from the body. And yet, the two clearly interact. Pain in the body is felt in the mind. A decision in the mind moves the body. If you touch fire, your body reacts, and your mind registers pain. If you decide to raise your hand, your body obeys. Where does this interaction take place? Descartes proposed that it happened in a small structure deep in the brain, the pineal gland. For him, it was the meeting point between the immaterial mind and the physical machine of the body. Now, modern neuroscience has disproven this specific anatomical claim, but the deeper issue remains alive. How can immaterial thoughts cause material movements? How can chemical reactions in the brain produce consciousness, imagination, and choice? This puzzle is not merely academic. It shapes how we view human dignity, responsibility, and even morality. Because if the mind is nothing but brain activity, then are we truly free? Or are we just machines running on complex algorithms of neurons and chemistry? But if the mind is separate and distinct, then what is its origin, and how does it survive? These are questions that stretch from Descartes' 17th century study all the way into modern philosophy and neuroscience. Descartes' solution was dualism, the belief that mind and body are distinct substances interacting with one another. He defended this view because he felt that if the mind were reducible to matter, then freedom would vanish. Every action would be predetermined by physical causes. The idea of responsibility, morality, even truth itself would dissolve. By affirming the mind as distinct, he preserved human freedom and responsibility. He preserved the dignity of the thinking self. But critics immediately pushed back. If mind and body are so radically different, how can they interact at all? How can something with no size, no shape, no matter push around the physical? The very notion seemed contradictory. Some philosophers argued that God was the true bridge, coordinating mental decisions with bodily actions. Others proposed that mind and body run in parallel without ever truly touching, like two clocks striking the same hour in perfect synchronization. Despite these criticisms, Descartes' bold claim left a lasting impact. He forced philosophy to wrestle with the question, what is the nature of consciousness? Is thought just another form of matter, or is it something irreducibly distinct? And this debate continues in modern science. Neuroscientists can map brain activity, trace chemical pathways, and even predict choices milliseconds before we make them. Yet, the subjective experience of thought, the I that observes and decides, still eludes physical explanation. Think of it this way, science can tell you which neurons fire when you see the color red. But can it explain why red feels the way it does to you? That raw subjective quality, philosophers call it qualia, is the mystery. Descartes would say this mystery is proof that the mind is more than matter. Our experience cannot be reduced to the mechanics of the brain. This is not only a scientific debate but also a deeply human one. If we are merely machines, then love, hope, suffering, and freedom are illusions. But if we are more than machines, then perhaps there is a dimension of existence that cannot be captured by science alone. Perhaps meaning itself rests in this immaterial dimension. Descartes' insistence on the distinctness of mind and body is often criticized as outdated. And yet, his core intuition, that consciousness is something extraordinary, something irreducible, continues to haunt modern thinkers. Even the most advanced theories of the brain still stumble when they try to reduce the self to synapses. We can model computation, but the lived experience of being, that inward awareness, remains a puzzle. And here is where Descartes' power truly shows. He does not give us the final answer, but he frames the question in a way that never dies. His dualism forces us to face the tension between freedom and determinism, between matter and meaning. He draws a line in the sand. If you want to deny the independence of the mind, then you must explain away consciousness itself. And that task has proven far harder than many anticipated. Let's make this concrete. Imagine you are standing at a crossroads, faced with a life-altering choice, to stay in a safe, predictable path or to risk everything for a dream. If your mind is nothing more than brain chemistry, then your decision is already determined by genetics, environment, and neural firing. You only feel like you are choosing. But if Descartes is right, then at that moment your mind is exercising real freedom, stepping beyond mere mechanics, shaping destiny itself. Which vision resonates with you more? That you are a machine in motion, or that you are a conscious agent capable of shaping your own life? Descartes places his faith in the latter. And in doing so, he preserves the possibility of meaning. He reminds us that without the freedom of the mind, all talk of morality, responsibility, and truth collapses. Of course, the challenge is that we experience both sides. We see the body's determinism, we feel hunger drive us, we see illness weaken us, we know that trauma shapes behavior. But we also experience the undeniable sense of freedom, the feeling that in some moments, despite everything, we can choose differently. This paradox is the human condition. And it is exactly what makes the mind-body problem more than theory. It makes it the heart of human existence. Even today, neuroscientists, psychologists, and philosophers circle around this very tension. Some lean toward materialism, others toward dualism. But everyone must wrestle with the fact that consciousness refuses to fit neatly into the machinery of the world. And so, Descartes leaves us with a vision: the body as mechanism, the mind as freedom. Two worlds intertwined, never reducible to one another, yet bound together in the mystery of human life. Whether or not we agree with him, his challenge stands. To understand ourselves, we must confront not only how matter moves but also how thought exists. But perhaps the most enduring legacy of Descartes is not just the mind-body problem or the famous, "I think, therefore I am." It is his radical conviction that the human mind possesses a power far greater than we usually imagine. For him, the mind is not a passive mirror simply reflecting the world. It is an active agent, capable of doubt, capable of freedom, capable of shaping meaning. And that idea, more than anything, continues to shape how we see ourselves today. To understand the weight of this, consider the Europe Descartes lived in. The 17th century was an age of turbulence, religious wars, scientific revolutions, political upheavals. Authority, both in the church and in traditional philosophy, was collapsing. People longed for certainty but were bombarded by conflicting voices. Descartes' method of doubt emerged from this chaos. Instead of trusting external authorities, he turned inward, seeking certainty within the very act of thinking. His project was not to destroy knowledge but to rebuild it on a foundation so firm that nothing could shake it. This was revolutionary. Before Descartes, truth was largely grounded in tradition, scripture, or the testimony of scholars. After Descartes, truth became something each individual could pursue through their own reasoning mind. He democratized the quest for knowledge. He said, in effect, you, the individual thinker, have the power to question, to reason, to discover. You need not bow to authority if your mind can perceive clearly and distinctly. This emphasis on the clarity of thought became a weapon against dogma. It encouraged scientists to look not to tradition but to evidence. It gave philosophers permission to challenge old systems. It empowered ordinary people to trust their own minds. Descartes laid the seed for the Enlightenment, that great age where reason, freedom, and human dignity began to flourish in new ways. And yet, Descartes was not naive about the dangers of the mind. He knew that imagination can mislead, that the senses can deceive, that even reasoning can be corrupted by passion. That is why his method was so severe, to strip away illusion until only the indubitable remained. But having done so, he emerged with an unshakable faith in the mind's ability to reach truth. Now pause for a moment and think about the power of this vision. In our modern world, we are bombarded by information, opinions, distractions, noise. Every day, we encounter contradictions, the news, social media, advertising, personal biases. Who can we trust? What is true? What is real? Descartes would say, begin by doubting, but do not remain in doubt. Use doubt as a method to reach clarity. Do not accept blindly, but do not despair either. Instead, think. Reflect. Seek what is clear and distinct. And in that, you will find the foundation you need. But Descartes also adds another dimension. It is not enough simply to know, one must act. The mind is not only contemplative but also directive. Our thoughts guide our choices, and our choices shape our lives. This is where his philosophy intersects with practical wisdom. To live well, we must discipline the mind, strengthen reason, guard against illusion, and then act with freedom. This is why Descartes' philosophy still matters. In a world of chaos, confusion, and manipulation, the greatest power you possess is the power of your mind. Not merely to absorb, but to question. Not merely to reflect, but to choose. Not merely to exist, but to define meaning. Let's take this into everyday life. Imagine you are facing a crisis, perhaps a sudden loss, a betrayal, a collapse of plans. The body reacts with stress, the emotions surge, the senses overwhelm. In such moments, it feels as if you are at the mercy of circumstance. But Descartes' philosophy offers another path: step back into the mind. Doubt the surface chaos. Ask yourself, what is truly clear here? What remains undeniable? What choices still lie within my power? By doing so, you reclaim freedom, even in the midst of turmoil. This is why Descartes still speaks to us. His philosophy is not just abstract metaphysics, it is a call to reclaim the sovereignty of the self. He reminds us that in a world of uncertainty, you can always return to the one thing that cannot be doubted, your own conscious awareness. From there, you can build, you can reason, you can choose. And yet, there is also humility in his vision. Because even as he elevates the power of the mind, he acknowledges its limits. He knew that human reason alone could not explain everything. He recognized the infinite, the divine, the mysteries beyond human grasp. In this, he avoided the arrogance of pure rationalism. He balanced confidence in reason with awe before what transcends it. So the power of the mind, in Descartes, is not absolute domination but balanced freedom. It is the capacity to discern truth, to exercise choice, to pursue clarity, while recognizing that some realities exceed us. This humility, paired with confidence, makes his vision enduring. And this is where his relevance deepens. In our age of technology, where algorithms track our every move and artificial intelligence mimics human thought, the question of what the mind truly is becomes urgent. Are we reducible to data? Are we predictable machines? Or is there still something unique about human consciousness, something irreducible to computation? Descartes would answer firmly, yes, there is. The mind is not mere matter. It is freedom, awareness, meaning. And if we forget this, we risk reducing ourselves to what machines already are, mere mechanism. But if we remember it, then we stand firm in our dignity. We refuse to be enslaved by algorithms, by propaganda, by fear. We reclaim the inner freedom that makes us human. This is why Descartes' philosophy is not a relic but a living challenge. He dares us to ask, do you know how powerful your mind truly is? Have you claimed that power, or have you surrendered it to habit, distraction, and manipulation? Are you living as a conscious thinker, or as a passive machine? And perhaps this is the deepest meaning of, I think, therefore I am. It is not just a proof of existence. It is a call to responsibility. To exist is not enough. To exist consciously, reflectively, freely, that is the true task. So, as we reflect on Descartes' legacy, the invitation is clear: use your mind. Not half-heartedly, not occasionally, but fully. Doubt what deserves doubt, but do not lose yourself in skepticism. Seek clarity. Build conviction. Act with freedom. This is the path to meaning, even in the most uncertain times. And before we close, let me remind you, we've explored in this video the extraordinary power of the human mind. But this is not the end of the journey. If this topic fascinates you, I'll leave links in the description to 2 other videos that expand this discussion. In our exploration of free will, we dive deeply into how the mind shapes the choices we make, examining whether freedom is real or just an illusion. And in our video on the meaning of life, we look at how different philosophies approach the ultimate questions of existence. I'll highly recommend you watch those videos, of course, after finishing this one. Because the path of philosophy is not a single step but a lifelong journey. Each idea opens to another, each thinker leads to new horizons. And Descartes is just one guide on this path. His insistence on the power of the mind invites us not only to admire but to practice, to live as thinkers, to live consciously. So, as we close, let me leave you with a challenge: the next time you feel lost in the noise of the world, pause. Step back. Doubt what confuses you. And then return to the clarity of your own mind. In that space of awareness, you will discover freedom. And in that freedom, you will discover meaning. Thank you for walking this path with me. If you found value in this journey, don't forget to like, share, and leave your thoughts in the comments. If you're new here, subscribe and join our growing tribe of thinkers around the world. We're building a community devoted to timeless wisdom, and I'd love for you to be part of it. And remember, new videos packed with insights drop every week. Also, there's a free gift waiting for you in the description, so after subscribing, go check it out. And if you want to keep exploring right now, don't go anywhere. Watch the video appearing on your screen. It continues this journey, expanding your understanding and deepening your path. Until then, stay thoughtful, stay curious, and never forget, the greatest power you hold is the power of your own mind.